Welcome to the Game Week 31 video. Now this week kicks off with Everton and Arsenal, and this is a big game for Arsenal for sure because I think they drop points here and that's the end of the title race. For Everton, they come to this game very buoyed and very, you could say, pleased with the performance in the FA Cup. Defeated Chelsea 2-0 and now progressed to the semi-finals. And it was a tight game, but no doubt Lukaku turned the tide with a great solo goal and a clinical finish for the second one. So credit to Everton. In terms of the players, I think Everton have to offer in terms of fantasy is Ross Barkley, and you definitely got Lukaku. It's my opinion that obviously Lukaku he's also got the penalty kick as well, and that for me is a big thing. He has missed his recent penalty against West Ham, but you probably think that if he's not going to take it, Ross Barkley will. So those are two players that I personally will look for. Morales obviously got sent off. Not quite sure. He might be back actually for this from a suspension because suspensions do count in the FA Cup. So he's another one if available. Whether if Martinez will stick with him, that's another question. But for me, for sure, these are the two players I'll look at from Everton. Arsenal, on the other hand, obviously for me, before I go to Arsenal, I just want to state Everton in the Premier League. I mean, their position has not it's not that great, and if I'm honest, they could maybe hope to get into the UEFA Cup. However, the way I see it is they probably spend a lot of resources and effort in the FA Cup. So, you know, especially the fact that they didn't have a midweek game, I think Everton will play a fully fit squad. Um, and the semi-final is still there's still enough weeks before that. So players might want to give the best performances um, weeks preceding to the semi-final, so they can get into the first team at Wembley. Now with Arsenal, what can I say about them? Obviously disappointing results in the Premier League, and but the draw against Tottenham for me was definitely a change in atmosphere because everything was very pessimistic. Most people had written Arsenal to lose that game emphatically, but to be honest, Arsenal should have won the game. And even with 10 men down, considering the chance that Ramsey had at the end, you just think Ramsey just then was slowly, becoming the old Ramsey in a weird way. We remember 2 years ago in fantasy when Ramsey was sensational and getting people loads of points. And it looked like as if, Ramsey slowly was going to recapture the previous form he had embarked on. But unfortunately, he's got another injury. Otherwise, he definitely would have been a player I would have recommended. In terms of also players, I mean, look, Gabriel looks like he'll be a first team player. So a defence at 4.3, and also defender. And Arsenal have kept clean sheets this season. So he's someone you should be looking at. Maybe not for this game week, but in the future. And you have obviously Sanchez for me, he got his goal. He's back. He had a chance against Barcelona. And for you guys I don't know, obviously Arsenal, as expected, got knocked out by Barcelona. But, had Barcelona wobbling, to be fair, at 1-1 in Nou Camp. And maybe had they not given a cheap second goal away at the Emirates, Arsenal might have had a better chance. But I think Barcelona were deserved winners. Now, along with Sanchez, who I think is slowly starting to pick form and is getting chances, you obviously have Mesut Ozil. And the striker situation is kind of precarious, but for no doubt at the moment, in my opinion, Welbeck is a gem around 7.3 or maybe just a bit more now with his value increased. Definitely worth a shout. Where do I see this game going? This has been a tough place for Arsenal if you look at history, and I think the last game they played here ended 2-2 in the league. So where do I see this going? I don't know, and it's really difficult to tell because it's a big game for Arsenal, but Everton, they've had their rest. They're very much, as I said, buoyed from you know the quarterfinal victory over Chelsea. So that's going to be interesting to see where this game ends up being won. Whether it's a moment of brilliance or someone's mistake, that would be interesting to see. Now for the 3 o'clock kickoffs, we've got Chelsea vs West Ham. Like I said, Chelsea disappointing result in the FA Cup, but they've been unbeaten in the league under Hiddink, and last result came against Stoke, but looks like Costa has got suspension, so that will obviously affect him. But I would say Fabregas, in the new position he's at with Hiddink, definitely someone to look at, along with um, potentially Oscar, he might come into the team, but I would say Fabregas mainly. Fabregas, Pedro, those are the type of players I'll look at. Hazard looks like he's injured but might be back, but I wouldn't say he's right now worth the shot. So Pedro and possibly Fabregas. But honestly, I think Fabregas is probably the one Chelsea player other than Costa that I look at and say, yeah, he's worth getting. Just because of the change in Gus Hidding's tactics. West Ham, on the other hand, great victory away to Everton, and a good draw against Man United. And should have won the game, to be honest. I think Man United got lucky with the goal that was given with them. So based off that, I would say West Ham come to this game very confident. You have Dimitri Payet on form, along with a few other players who've been performing very well for West Ham in the last few games. West Ham, currently very close to the top 4 positions, and the way I see it is, I just don't see them losing this game, unfortunately. So, but I do have the replay in mind. So it's a game where does Bilic rest some players and try to wrap them in cotton wool? I don't think that will happen. So I'm just going to be very surprised if Chelsea do win this game without Costa. In terms of Palace and Leicester, a massive game, and Palace come from a very good 2-0 win away to Reading, won the game late on, avoided the replay, but more importantly got into the semi-finals. For me, Balassi had several chances in that game, and he's the one player I think you've got to be looking at £6 million, 100%, a real steal in this game, in my opinion. And then you have Zaha, a few other players, but Balassi and Zaha are the main 2 players I look at Palace and that really excite me. In terms of Leicester, big win, 1-0 away, 1-0 at home against Newcastle, and a tight game. However, settled by a moment of brilliance really by Okazaki. The goal probably should have been offside, but Leicester will take it. Obviously, key players, if not known right now, Mahrez, you've got Vardy. Despite Okazaki's very good goal, I think he's not a player I'll look at in fantasy. Surprisingly, I recently actually bought 2 Leicester defenders in my team, and both got clean sheets. And they're valued quite low. So Morgan at 4.3, and I think Simpson's he's probably risen up, but he's probably around about 4.1 to 4.3 as well. Definitely worth a shout. Look, I think if Leicester are not going to win the league, they probably drop points here. So very hard to call, and I think Palace do need to get results under Adam Pardew because they're not necessarily safe and haven't been performing well. So this will be an interesting game to watch. Watford and Stoke. Watford, Troy Deeney and Igalo, hands down, the 2 players you have to look at. Despite Guardiola's great goal against Arsenal, those are the 2 players I look at in fantasy. And obviously, they're, again, delighted with the FA Cup victory, but just like Everton, I think they'd probably be thinking more about the semi-finals. Stoke, on the other hand, disappointed probably with the defeat, at home to Southampton, a game which I think they really got caught out at the start with set pieces, and that's all there's really said. Obviously, Afalai and Arnautovic got the points in fantasy into the Stoke. Arnautovic, hands down, for me, is the player we're looking at right now, especially with the penalty kick as well. Afalai, if he does get something, he does seem to be generously benefited with the BPS system, so he's also someone you probably should look at as well. Tight game. It's going to be a tight game. This result could go either way. West Ham and Norwich now. West Brom, have done well, to be honest, and Tony Pulis. All of a sudden, the Sun collect a few points and a few victories have really propelled themselves high in the table. And a big victory against Manchester United for sure has eased fears of West Brom being really involved in the scrap in the last 8 games at least. Berrino, Sessegnon, and Rondon. Those are the 3 players I look at. Obviously, Rondon got the goal against Man United. And defensively, probably also at 4.3, a player who I used to have on my team, are the ones you want to look at. Norwich come from, a good draw at home to Man City, but they had chances. So I think with Norwich, they need to get a win very soon. And this is probably one of those games where they need to get something. So this again is a massive game at the bottom of the table, and let's see what happens. But I really think Norwich cannot, go on and not win games. In terms of the 5:30 kickoff, Swansea and Villa, and Swansea disappointing defeat against Bournemouth. A very good game, 3-2, but they'll be disappointed in the fact that they didn't get anything out of the game. And Sigurdsson's been doing very well, in my opinion, up there in terms of being one of the player of the month. You've got Barrow at 4.3, who's now injured, but he performed very well in that game, got a goal and assist. So those are the kind of players I'll definitely be looking at, especially Sigurdsson. I think with the free kicks and penalties as well, 100% worth the shout. Villa, to be frank, easy dispatched by Tottenham. Tottenham could have easily been 3-0 up in like 20 minutes if it wasn't for Barclays. So I want to save you guys, a lot of time here by saying there's absolutely no player at Villa that I think you guys should invest in right now, because I really think they just lack spirit. So I think this is a game which, Villa have to win, but I just don't see it happening. So I'm going to go for a Swansea win. In terms of the Sunday games, Newcastle and Sunderland. Newcastle disappointing defeat against Leicester, but they'll have to bounce back. And with Rafa Benitez, you can see it happening, possibly. Mitrovic is back in strike, so you can look at him, Sissoko, Wijnaldum, Ayala Perez. I guess it's just take your pick. Defensively, Steven Taylor is probably the cheapest bet you can get. Sunderland, on the other hand, they'll be very disappointed with the draw away to Southampton, which they end up conceding an equaliser very late on. Now, Defoe and Kazri, these are the type of players, personally, I think that are most exciting at Sunderland and in fantasy as well. So for those reasons, those are the players I'll look at. But this is a big game. Newcastle, Sunderland, it's a massive derby, and I think this is a typical boxing match. I think whoever wins here will in essence knock out their opponent. The other game at the same time is Southampton and Liverpool, and Southampton, great win away to Stoke, something that I didn't see, and it goes to show that they've done pretty well, Southampton. Definitely the last few months under Roy Koeman, and Pellet's back, so good 2 goals, and I think he's someone you have to now consider again, considering the form that he had at the start of the season. And you've got obviously Target at 3.8, Van Dijk, but yeah, those are the players I personally would go for. Tadic is showing some good features to his game as well, so Tadic might be worth a shout as well. Liverpool, on the other hand, starting to do quite well. Obviously they beat Palace away 2-1 due to a controversial goal from Benteke with the penalty appeal, and him winning it in the first place as well, which was kind of funny. But big result for them in the UEFA Cup, knocking Man United out. And for me, I think the 2 players I really look at that excite me in fantasy, if I were to get players from Liverpool at the moment, would be Coutinho and Firmino. Those 2 players, hands down, very exciting. So if you're looking for Liverpool players, those are 2 players I look at. Man City and Man United, big derby again, and Man City obviously progressed for the Champions League, but I just don't see them winning the league, unfortunately, this season. Company injured, big blow, and obviously we've discussed players that who I think Man City have great points potential. Obviously Aguero, we've discussed Silva, Yaya, Sterling. De Bruyne is still, away, but I think he'll be a big player once he comes back. Man United, on the other hand, I should mention, by the way, the defenders at Man City are quite expensive, so just for that reason, despite the injuries, there's not really a player I would recommend, unless you want to go for the cheapest. Man United, on the other hand, this is a big game for them, because I think if they lose this game, they won't qualify the Champions League, in my opinion, and that, for me, could really then trigger, whether if LVG is going to remain as Man United manager. I think until now, all this speculation has been pretty immature because Man United were never out of the Champions League positions. In fact, at one point, they looked like they got back into it when they beat Arsenal and did very well against Midtjylland to get into the next round of the Europa League. But now they're in a precarious situation, and now it's really a showtime for Man United. Martial, Marcus Rashford, for me, 100%. These are two players I would look at. Rashford at 4.5 is definitely a steal. Might be worth it at 4.6, but definitely worth looking at. I'm going to go for a Man City win, but let's see what happens. In our last game, Spurs and Bournemouth. Spurs 2-0 win away to Villa. Harry Kane, two goals for him and 2 assists for Dele Alli. Not that UEFA League, UEFA Cup, or Europa League, whatever you call it. I think the biggest thing here is this means more rest time, and I think Eriksen, some players around the first team setup will benefit from rests, especially from midweek. So Eriksen, Kane, and even Wimmer at 4.6. Spurs have been keeping clean sheets quite consistently this season, and he's definitely worth a steal. He's a player in my team as well. Bournemouth, great win. King, for me, being heavily involved in what they do. Grade all of a sudden back from injury. It's a new spark of life for Bournemouth, and those are the players I would especially look at when coming to Bournemouth. Of course, you have Daniels for me, which I would also recommend in defence from Bournemouth. Tight game. I think this is a game which Spurs can also potentially drop points at. It's not a guaranteed win because Bournemouth have been really good this season and very good in the last past few weeks as well. So that's my analysis of Game Week 31. And before I end, I want to state that I think on Game Week 34, 35, there are double fixtures, and loads of teams have double fixtures. So you might want to start stockpiling players from now. So start using your free transfers, and you don't want to do all your transfers, around then. You want to build it up. So you might want to start looking at players now who have double fixtures in that particular game week. So that's my analysis of Game Week 31, and thanks for watching my video.